Kia ora. Welcome to Shared Lunch. My name is Leighton Robertson, the co-founder and co-CEO at Sharesies. Today, I'm joined by Luke Kemeys, who is from the Next Advisory and from the podcast Keep the Change. And we're going to be speaking about the top 5 barriers that he hears from his listeners on growing wealth. But before we get started, here's some important information.
Investing involves risk. You might lose the money you start with. We recommend talking to a licensed financial advisor. We also recommend reading product disclosure documents before deciding to invest. Everything you're about to see and hear is current at the time of recording.
So we've got Luke. Awesome to catch up again, Luke. So thanks so much for joining us today. Look, you're a super busy guy. You've got the Keep the Change. You've got Boys Get Paid. You do a bit of accounting on the side, I hear. I'd love to hear just a little bit about you and how you came to be Luke Kemeys and the views and the education that you're bringing to the world now.
Yeah, nice, mate. Well, accounting is my day job as such, 9 to 5. And I got into the industry. I liked business at university. I think I did my first sort of introduction to shares when I was sixth form via an economics teacher who taught us about buying a share and then we're going to track it over the school term and stuff. So I think that's what intrigued me about investing.
Did you actually buy a share?
Not physically. I think we did some sort of website you could go to. I think maybe even the NZX had some sort of dummy type thing that you could log in to learn from. But I can't remember. I feel like I might have purchased Infratel or something like that. But
that would have done it right.
If I held it. But we'll get to that, mate. But that probably led to me believing that maybe investing was a bit like gambling, where you kind of put it in and then you hope you get it out in the coming weeks. But it's not necessarily how it works. And I've had a couple of those lessons throughout my life too. But yeah, so chartered accountant now, I have my own accounting practice. And then often I would go home to my parents and talk about money and finance, and we would come back to sort of this conversation around how we have a lack of financial education in New Zealand. And so they were sort of saying one day, well, why don't you do something about it? Stop talking about it. So I started writing a money mail, which is basically a Friday email to go out to help people understand more about money and taxes and some of the things that I was seeing in my day job. And that then started to grow. And I knew that podcasting was probably the platform that was sort of in vogue and what people really want to consume on. So I started doing podcasts with an audio version. And that's grown and turned into Keep the Change today, that a lot of people listen to, but people read as well. And then the social content that wraps around everything we do in life these days, whether it's growing a business or trying to get information in front of people. So yeah, I'm into year 5 of Keep the Change now, and I'm into year 8 of Next Advisory.
Wow! 8 years, right? So that's you're right into it. Look, congratulations. I tell the team around Sharesies often, actually, it's that your podcast and your type of education is one that I personally resonate with a lot. So I've been excited to have this conversation. And you're super passionate about financial literacy, and it's obviously something that we believe in at Sharesies, and we invest in heavily as well. It's absolutely critical to our business model. But what I'd like to know is, of the top 5 barriers that stop people from creating wealth, what are they for you? And, give us the first one.
All right. So I was trying to sort of distill it into some of the common themes that I see. And I think, one of them is that people, to start with, don't have goals. And as much as I said before, invest for options, people, when they'll ask me money questions, which I'm not going to answer because I'm not a financial advisor, but I'm like, why don't you just take action that's going to get you closer to your goals? And so many times people just won't respond, or you can tell that they haven't actually thought about why they're doing what they need to be doing, or what it is that they need to be doing, because they don't really know where they're going and they've just been drifting. But I see it in business as well, and it's often why people come to us, because they're trying to figure out where is it that they're trying to go and what is it that they're trying to achieve. And it's actually a really exciting exercise to do, is figure out, okay, what are these things? And it could be having a child, for instance. So then your goals are going to be, okay, well, let's get ourselves ready for that. What are we going to need to buy? What are those things going to cost? And all of that sort of stuff. And then, okay, well, we set up an investment account for them. Do we agree with that as a couple, or do we want to make it hard for them, or whatever? And you start to then get to have more of those conversations and then direct your money or your investments towards that. So I think, to start with, not knowing yourself or your goals, if you don't do that work, then it makes it tricky to kind of get on the right train and actually get moving in the right direction.
Yeah. I see a lot of that, and this was something I've always struggled with in business, and it surprises a lot of people, given my background now, but I've always struggled with goal setting. But what I haven't struggled with is the idea that I will have goals and things I want to do in the future, which is something you touched on earlier around flexibility. So my early investing, I started this investment club when I was 17, was purely because I knew that at some point in the future I would want to have money available. And I don't think I had any idea on what that was for, but like I think you can overstress, can't you? Like the specifics of that sometimes. Like it's fine not to know necessarily that you want, but you should also be aware that you probably will want something.
Yeah. I mean, like I paid $11 in an Uber to get down here for this, but years ago I would never have paid that because I'd be like, oh, what a waste of money. I could just walk down and all that sort of stuff. But I needed to use the time, and I needed to take a phone call, and I needed to do like a little bit of prep for some other things that I've got coming up. So I look at it differently, and I think actually that $12 Uber is an investment into myself because I can now get that time back rather than getting on a scooter and going down Queen Street and potentially bumping into someone or dropping my phone or getting to the end point and still being stressed. So, once you're a little bit clear around, what you're doing, why you're doing these things, and then what you need money for, it then makes it actually a little bit easier to deploy that. But if you told me at one stage, you'll pay $12 to go on an Uber to do that, I would, be like, there's no way that I'm going to spend that. What a waste of money. Now I see it as an investment into my goals.
Completely.
Yeah.
It's another good example of where I think people, if they're doing that on behalf of the business, get that that's good use of money. But on behalf of themselves, it's a bit harder. That's a fantastic first one. What about the second?
I think just not getting started at all and sort of being stuck at that, maybe next year, or I'll wait till I've cleared my credit card, or like there's always something that's going to get in the way. And I think if we don't just get started, then we don't give ourselves the opportunity to get closer to an ability to build a habit doing some of these things. Or it could be, someone said to me recently, I'm a student, so I don't have any money to invest. I'm like, well, mate, like invest $1, invest $5 just to learn the process, just to get closer to it, to get around the right information, to understand what information they need, to figure out what would you put it into. Because if you always believe you don't have enough money, like when do you sit down and have the conversation with yourself and go, I've got a lot of money now, I'll start investing? Because then what I see people do is they, let's say, inherit money, or they get a bit of money and they're like, right, I'm going to start investing, but what do I do? It's like you probably could have learnt what to do in the meantime, or now they've got to go through the fear mode of, I'm too scared to invest. Should I? Is it a good idea? But if they had maybe educated themselves along that journey, then it might be easier once they get to that point of having the money.
Yeah. One of the quotes I like to give anyone at Sharesies who will listen to me, but the exponential part of the time value of money equation, which for those who don't know that equation, it's worth a Google, but it's basically just explaining compound interest. But like literally the exponential, or to the power of, is time. And time is the most influential thing that you can do with your money. And so I ran this interesting test. Like we've got kids accounts for a while. We have kids, so it was very important to us that we gave them that opportunity. But what we started doing was we put $5 a week away into our kids' accounts, because the maths I did was that would mean they never had to worry about retirement. If and hopefully I'll be able to convince them to do it as well once they're turn 18 or whatever age I hand the portfolio over, but not inflation adjusted at all, just literally in real terms, $5 until they're 65, and they won't need anything else in their life for retirement. So just really trying to teach those habits over time.
Yeah. I started investing for my nephew because I don't have kids yet, and I thought, okay, I'm going to build a fund so that as he gets older, I can start teaching him around investing, and then maybe, what he could put some money into, or maybe some different options around schooling or starting a business, or, whatever it could be.
That's an awesome second one. What about the third?
I've said here, like, aiming for perfect. So I kind of get the messages, hey, what's the best platform to use? I'm like, just one that's going to get you in the game. Which one is it? I'm like, I don't know. Like, I don't go around studying the best. I've never been one of those people. So I don't get the whole sort of the perfect, or what's the perfect time, or the best platform and all that stuff. And I kind of joke about it, and I say, look, well, I'm going to get rid of the internet at my apartment now, because until I know what the best internet provider is, I just don't think there's any point in me having the internet. You be like, what are you doing, you dickhead? Like, that's ridiculous. But when it's investing, I don't think it's actually what people are saying. I think they're saying, look, I'm pretty scared to do this, so I'm going to wait for the perfect time, the best platform. I'm going to research, what about their fees and like all of this stuff. And it's all important stuff to look into. But I kind of think, wouldn't you get started first? And like, wouldn't you get the internet provider first and someone comes around and goes, oh, you with them for the internet. Do you know you can actually switch easy and that one's a lot cheaper? Oh, okay. But like, at least you've got the internet, you've got the Wi-Fi going, you've got access to learning. But I think when you get yourself stuck at that kind of, I need everything to be perfect, it's a really tough place to live, because what happens if you got the perfect platform or the perfect time to invest and then, it changes. And, this timing for me has always been something that I've kind of had to cop, because, I made some really poor financial decisions throughout my life when, I should have known, better, and I could have invested into Xero. I could have invested in more into A2 Milk. And I've got all these, stories that I share on Keep the Change and stuff. But then I finally start getting myself financially sweet again. And I'm like, right, mate, the next step is to start investing. So bang, deploy some capital into the market. And it's like, 3 months before the pandemic starts. I'm like, oh, of course it is, seriously. But I'm like, well, I just have to go through it, But you're never going to perfect it. You're never going to time it. But I think when you get stuck in the analysis paralysis or waiting for the perfect time or the perfect platform, you just have to have a chat with yourself and go, how realistic is this? And how long is it going to hold me back from moving forward in my life?
And then there's like a second confidence thing on this getting started, which is something I hear a huge amount, including from some of the people who work at Sharesies sometimes, which is like, so they'll ask about investing, like, do you invest? And I'm very proud that most people now say, yes, I do. Like, that's an epic change, I think, over the last sort of 8 years or so. But after that, they're like, but I don't really know what I'm doing. I just put some money in every week into these funds and I auto-invest it. I'm just like, you know exactly what you're doing. Like that is actually a great strategy, and it's the one you've chosen. And I'm excited for that next bit of ownership, which is not only have people got past this getting started hurdle, they're also in the confidence part of like, yes, I'm an investor, and yes, I know what I'm doing. I dollar cost average, and I do that every week, and it's the way that my money works best for me.
Yeah.
So that's another epic one. Which one are we up to here? Are we up to number
4?
4?
Yeah.
What are we?
So this one, I guess it's kind of analysis paralysis / noise, and it kind of combines with that third one, I think. But then I bump into these people that like know everything, and I'm like, wow, this person is so educated, and like, how the hell do they know all this information? And then I'll ask them, okay, so what are you doing with this information? Like, no, nothing. I'm like, well, what's the point of having, all of this information? So I think some people go and collect all the data, and they do analyze like all of the platforms and all the different options and the different funds, and there's this one hedged against the dollar, and was this one backed by gold, and like all of this stuff, and they know it all, but they still haven't taken any action. And you kind of think, why have you made your life so hard? So I think, sometimes those sorts of people, they gravitate towards having everything before getting started. But again, it doesn't mean that they may make the right decisions, because they still can't bring themselves to letting go of the cash.
To repeat, the 4 we've got so far, as I wrote them down. So no goals, or not knowing yourself, and then not getting started, or thinking it won't make a difference if you do, aiming for perfect, and then analysis paralysis, so overthinking it and doing too much work, but also not getting started. So what's the 5th?
I think the 5th is, fear of losing money. And I think if we're realistic, for a lot of us, we're scared, right? We are really freaking out that our money's going to go backwards. And we're the people who got it wrong, who timed it wrong, who, have to tell people that my investments have gone backwards. And like you say, people are probably logging into their accounts and seeing that. And I think I read somewhere that, the human brain sees the negative, and it feels way worse than the positive, right? So if we're down 10%, that's going to be magnified compared to if we're up 10%. So we're probably going to be logging back in the next day like, oh, we're down 11. But, does it really matter? And if you're keeping yourself in the market, time in the market, and you're not trying to time it, then you're going to have to accept that there will be ups and downs, just like me buying just before we go into a pandemic. And, I've got countless stories about it. But, to think that you're going to ever invest, or to get away with spending money in your life and not get something go wrong, is probably a little bit silly. And I think what's hard, and what's something I was going to touch on earlier for you guys, mate, is that you're competing in a world of consumerism where so many people can make sense of the best credit card, the best buy now, pay later, all of that stuff, and wait till this month to get this deal, and this place has got a better deal, and like we can figure all that out. But as soon as it comes, and we're going to get something in return quickly that we probably won't even have by the next year, and it might end up in the bin or we don't use it, and the dopamine rush is let go. But when it comes to investing, it's like, oh, should I do that? Is that a good idea? When really, there's a chance that that's actually going to turn into something in the future.
One of the examples we often use at Sharesies is like, New Zealanders love investment property. If we can move the knowledge that we have from that, which is now inherent, I think, as a country, into capital or equities and capital markets, then that could serve us very well. And what I mean by that is, like, if someone buys a house, first, there's no little ticker on the letterbox that says, hey, you're up 1% today and down 1% or anything like that. So you don't arrive at it every day thinking you need to check what that is. Or if you do check on one of the websites, it doesn't really emotionally affect you, because you know that a seller or a buyer has to want a certain price. You know that if you sell it tomorrow, you'll probably lose money on real estate fees and all of these other things. And if you hold it for a long time, you'll probably do very well out of it. So like, I think we can just take those lessons, because it's exactly the same in companies. And ultimately, we live in a world where growth is required. It's baked into our system, a certain amount of inflation. And to achieve that, we need to do certain things in companies. Like, one of my favorite things to remind people is that companies pay the mortgage doesn't pay the company. So like, the more we can get into that and that mindset, then like at the end of the day, if the market as a whole is not worth anything into the future, then money is not a thing as we know it now. So it doesn't matter, it's engineered to perform.
Yeah. And like, very quickly on that, I think that was one of the unlocks for me, as I started building up enough money that I got a return on it. And I had this realization of, wow, this company's paid for my gym membership. And then I started to go deeper of, okay, if I continue to invest and if I continue to get returns, whether it be dividends or some forms of income from those investments, they're going to subsidize my rent. So then do I care so much about this whole, like, you're paying someone else's mortgage? And that's just how I made sense of it. And I know, saying that, people are going to derail this whole podcast because now they have to get tribal about whether they love property or not. Chill out. Like, everyone's finding their own path, and we're so defensive around our strategies. But when you start to see a return from your investments and even have some of your life costs subsidized, it really does unlock a different way to look at investing.
I've never thought about that way of thinking. I'll have to have a look. I love these ideas of where you're like, you're training yourself to be motivated into something. I haven't thought about what's paying my gym membership, or what. I might have to try find a nice gym company or health company or something that's doing that. It's a great idea. Anyway, those are 5 awesome tips, and I think a huge alignment on those. I will ask you one more question. How do you think the Warriors go next season without Sean Johnson?
Oh, what a shame, mate! What a guy! Like, what an investment he's made to the club and to rugby league in this country. And it's another good example of how now it's easy to look back and be like, what a difference he made. So yeah, shout out to Sean Johnson out there. But anyway, oh mate, top 4 for sure. Top 4, surely.
I know. I will make the trip to Australia if we make the grand final. That's one of the things I will splurge on. That's one of those future goals that I'm preparing for one day.
It's a great. I've been to the Warriors grand final action. I've been to the last couple as well. It's an amazing experience.
Epic. All right. Well, thanks so much for joining us, Luke, and thanks everyone for tuning in. You can watch Shared Lunch on YouTube or follow the podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Leave us a rating and a comment about what you'd like to hear about next, and enjoy the rest of your week.